and welcome back to Traffic Talks. I hope you are doing well and that you are actually enjoying listening to the podcast, because one thing I've come to realize is that if I'm not in the right headspace to listen to things, I kind of half listen, or I end up having to go back and re-listen to some things. So I do hope you are enjoying these podcasts and get something out of it. Anyway, this does sound a bit funny. Once again, like I said, I've batch recorded some things, so my voice is still not 100% because I'm physically not 100%. As you know from the catch-up of last week, I've been running around like crazy, so things have been crazy for lack of a better term, and my immune system has taken a knock, and with the fear of this third wave, me having to constantly go to the airport to pick up and drop off people, it's been a bit of a worry. So I think that's just contributed to it, but I am fine and I'm getting better, so I'll be good by next week, that I can promise you. On to this week's actual episode. As you can see, it's called Staying the Course, because one thing I have realized while working is that I needed to stay the course. A lot of times I tend to get worried or fret about what's happening tomorrow, or what I didn't get done yesterday, or just being frazzled and all over the place. And I realized that if you just keep your head down and focus on what you are doing in the moment, you'll be much better off. That is what today's episode is about, and it's also about dealing with overwhelm, because that is something that can affect every single person, and especially in a house like ours where we literally have a student, 2 working people, and a full-time housewife. It's a lot of people, and then someone who actually goes to work as well. So there's a lot of different factors that we need to look at just on a daily basis, and it can get overwhelming because sometimes the student has to stay after school or things like that, and it just gets hectic, and if you don't plan for it, it all goes awry. So that is today's episode, and I hope you will enjoy it. So here we go. This episode was actually very difficult to piece together, and I think that's very telling, especially since last week's episode as well was very off the cuff and spur of the moment, because prior to that, for 3 weeks straight, there was a theme to the episode. By that I mean there was either some public holiday I could fall back on, or some national holiday that everyone's celebrating, or some form of idea or topic that was given to me versus me having to go think one up. And that, to a certain extent, made me lazy, but it made things very easy in terms of being able to create an episode out of it. I had to do a little bit of research, I had to formulate around that, but off I went. It was fairly simple to do. Now that I had to actually come up with what I wanted to speak about, I was stuck in no man's land. I was completely lost and out of ideas, and I just had no idea what to do, and that was extremely overwhelming, because every time it got closer to the day and I'm just like, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to talk about? What am I going to talk about? And being overwhelmed is other people's basic mode of function. I do not like it. I do not work well with it. The less I need to think about something, the easier off I am, because for me, I cannot be in a state of overwhelm. One of the things I'm definitely going to do is give you a couple of tips to handle it and how to deal with it, because a lot of times there are ways around avoid being overwhelmed. So that's what it is. And if I can also say, I'm going to use the word overwhelm or overwhelmed a lot, so I'm going to apologize in advance for that. So please, I'm so sorry, but just bear with me. So being overwhelmed for me comes when there's no planning. As the very example of this podcast popped up, being overwhelmed was the main thing going through my mind, because next week we are doing a 3-month check-in on my goals. Spoiler alert, it has not gone very well. It's almost like the path was laid out for me, and it's like, you know what? Shut left. Let's not do that. So that's the thing that happened with that, but you can check that out in next week's episode. This week though, overwhelm. I have had to understand how it comes up in me, and for me, it's poor planning. If nothing is planned, I get overwhelmed, I get frustrated, I get upset, just because nothing is planned. even if I write out a to-do list, I'm immediately at ease, versus having all these things floating in my mind and not knowing what to do first. It overwhelms me, it kills me, and then I just want to go sleep. That is my thing. For me, overwhelm manifests because of poor planning. And one of the things I love to do is prep and plan ahead. So for me, I get overwhelmed when other people ask me to do things off the cuff. Because yes, if I have a few hours notice, I can make a plan. If you tell me now we need to leave in 5 minutes and it's a work day, I'm gonna lose my mind because I cannot function like that. That is insane. And also having that expectation of another person is completely unacceptable, especially in this day and age where we are on the cusp of a third wave. We are still in certain parts not having people that completely adhere to the actual laws of wearing a mask and social distancing and stuff. And having to do that with all this going around is completely insane. So give me a heads up, plan ahead, let me know. I mean, if it's a weekend, I can be ready in 15 minutes, not a problem. I've done it several times. If it's a work week, I am working, I need to have not taken my lunch yet. Like, there's a lot of factors that play in. Poor planning is definitely my downfall with overwhelm. For other people, I think it's a fairly similar thing across the board, but it can manifest in different ways. By that I mean, with me, poor planning leads to overwhelm, leads to me stressing out and not being able to sleep, not being able to get things done. And then I have to just separate myself, write everything out and just get rid of it and move on with my day. For other people, it might be just going for a walk. It might be taking the rest of the day off to sort themselves out. Whatever way you deal with overwhelm, good. Figure it out and use it, because the worst thing is being overwhelmed and not knowing how to deal with it. We also get different kinds of overwhelm. So for me, it's generally a fleeting feeling of just I don't have enough time. Other people may be overwhelmed because of emotions, because of other physical factors, like suddenly a panic attack kind of overwhelm, or different things like that. And finding out what triggers you after you've calmed down, obviously, and dealt with it is always a good idea, because it's the best thing for your mental health. We all know I'm a huge advocate for mental health. My mental health series that I did last year was one of my most, I think, proudest moments of my podcast, that I was able to do that and add that in on top of everything. Once again, I was a bit stressed out that time, but I had a plan and I was going for it even if it was a bit late. So I was stressed but not overwhelmed, because overwhelm to me is way more intense than stress. My point is, different things can trigger your overwhelm, and looking once again after the fact to what caused it can help you either prevent it or deal with it faster the next time it does happen, because feeling overwhelmed is not a one-time thing. It happened in the past, it happened whenever it did, it's gonna happen again. Being able to get through that process faster is gonna be such a good thing for yourself, because it's like you learning and you're getting better at it every single time, even if you don't know when it's gonna happen. Because like with things in life, you do something for the first time and it's like making a recipe. Let's compare it to that. So yes, cooking, okay, we know, moving on. You have a recipe. You take forever to measure out the ingredients. I apologize for the noise. It's the neighbors. Anyway, having the recipe in front of you, you slowly and methodically measure out all the ingredients. You put them in the little individual bowls, even if the bowls are mismatched. You read through the instructions several times, constantly going back. And a recipe that should take you an hour ends up taking you 3 hours. But the next time you handle that recipe, it maybe only takes you the 2 hours instead of 3. The next time it takes you an hour. And before you know it, you actually have figured out tips and tricks to get through it in maybe half the time. Same thing with dealing with overwhelm. Going through it the first time is hard, but you're gonna go through it again. And if you have a plan of attack, you'll be better off. Like I said, as with everything, you are a unique person that needs to deal with your things in your ways. Find methods that other people have used and try them out, and eventually figure out what works best for you. For example, if I'm feeling overwhelmed at work, I literally push away from my desk, leave my phone where it is, and take a walk. I go downstairs, I talk to my brother, talk to my mom, and I come back upstairs. 5-10 minutes, that's it. And then I look at what I need to do, section things off, and just try and knock off small little tasks at a time. Because if you're looking at the elephant as a whole, you're gonna feel sick. If you look at it in tiny bites, you got this. That is one thing that I can say definitely helps. Try breaking things down. Another thing is, once you've dealt with it, try and look back at what triggered the overwhelm. Sometimes for me, it's a client that called and upset me because they said something that I didn't like about my work ethic, or they were upset about something that I have no control over. And that can be a lot because I am, as you guys know, I am in a way a perfectionist when it comes to things, and especially if it's my work, I want to put my best effort forward. So having those kinds of things spoken about in such a way is not my idea of a good day. So figuring out what can trigger it can actually help. And I've also noted that journaling it out afterwards also does wonders. But like I said, that may not work for you, but it does for me. Something else might work for you that doesn't for me. So research it, try and figure out a few things, and try different things until you find something that works. Sometimes straight off the bat something works, other times it's going to take a lot of trial and error, but that's what it's all about. Trying things that will work for you. Anyway, that is it from me this week. I hope you at least learned how to deal a little bit with overwhelm, because that's all I felt recently, and I'm just like, why? And journaling it did help me. So that's that. I gotta run. As you can hear, it's getting a bit noisy and crazy. So that's it for this week. The song of this week is Don't Worry About a Thing by Bob Marley, because that is basically it. Yesterday was a hectic day. Today might be a hectic day. Tomorrow will be a hectic day. But how you deal with it, one obstacle at a time, is up to you. Focus on immediately what's in front of you. And when things are easy, look towards the future and plan it out. But take it one step at a time. That's it from me. I hope you have a good week and enjoy. Love you. Bye.